If you told me a year ago that I'd be sharing the most humiliating, jaw-dropping day of my life with the entire internet, I would have laughed in your face. But here I am, spilling my guts because honestly, I can't sleep until I get this out. I know you're expecting some big dramatic, husband cheated with his secretary cliché. Trust me, this is messier, juicier, and so much more complicated than anything you'll find on those late-night TV shows. It all started on the morning of my son Jake's 7th birthday. I was the mom who went all out, color-coded balloons, themed cupcakes, custom banner, and enough party favors to rival the Oscars. My husband, Brandon, was running around snapping photos, hyping Jake up, giving me that, "how did I get so lucky" grin. He always did that, played the perfect dad, the golden husband, the guy who would literally sprint to the store if I said we were out of Jake's favorite cookies. It was the kind of life you post on Instagram, the one everyone likes, but no one really believes is that perfect. Looking back now, I see the cracks. I'd tell myself I was just paranoid, that every couple has their rough patches, and maybe I was just being too sensitive. Brandon traveled for work. He had one of those jobs that sounded impressive but was too vague to explain at parties. Business development, he'd say, flashing his million-watt smile. I help people make money. Sometimes he'd be gone 3 nights a week. Sometimes just one, always returning with some cheap airport souvenir for Jake and a kiss for me that tasted like hotel coffee. But that Saturday, everything was in place. Jake had his Avengers shirt on, his little friends had started to arrive, and my sister helped me carry out a 3-layer cake I decorated myself. I remember thinking, this is it, this is what happy looks like. God, I wish I'd taken a photo of that moment before it all blew up. The party was in full swing, kids running everywhere, adults making small talk, Brandon flipping burgers on the grill. I was wiping cake off Jake's cheek when my phone buzzed. "Hey, could you meet the pizza delivery at the front gate?" I hustled down the driveway, waving to parents, all the while feeling like I'd finally nailed this supermom thing. That's when I heard tires crunching on gravel. I turned, expecting a pizza car. Instead, a shiny black SUV pulled up, tinted windows glinting in the sun. My stomach did a weird flip, maybe a parent I forgot to invite. The back door opened and a woman stepped out. She was tall, well-dressed, with 3 kids in tow, 2 girls and a boy, all about Jake's age or younger. She was holding a brightly wrapped present and scanning the yard like she was searching for someone. Before I could say a word, she called out, "Excuse me, is this Brandon Miller's house?" Her voice was steady, but her eyes darted, like she was bracing for a fight. I felt my blood run cold. "That's my husband," I managed, because what else could I say? She stiffened. "I'm his wife." "Well, apparently one of them." The kids hovered behind her, staring wide-eyed at me, then at Jake, who'd wandered up to see what was happening. There was a pause, one of those sickeningly long silences where your whole world tilts. I could actually hear my heart thumping in my ears. "You must be joking," I choked out, voice barely above a whisper. She shook her head, reaching into her purse. Out came a worn marriage certificate. I wish I was. It's amazing how time slows down when your life shatters. In that instant, I saw everything. Brandon's late-night calls, his unexplained weekends away, the vague stories, the way he dodged certain questions about his other family when I pressed too hard. All the little red flags I'd shoved aside for years. She looked at Jake, then back at me. "My kids wanted to meet their brother. I found your address in Brandon's car. I'm sorry, but we're not leaving." The air was electric. Behind me, I heard the birthday music, the laughter of kids who still believed in superheroes and happy endings. In front of me, my husband's double life was standing on my front lawn, holding a present for my son. That's when Brandon appeared, jogging up the driveway, face gone sheet white. "What's going on?" he blurted, glancing from me to her to the kids. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, not yet. Instead, I did the only thing I could think of. I invited her and her children inside. Maybe that sounds insane, but I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of a dramatic meltdown. If he wanted his secrets to crash and burn, I'd make sure the whole neighborhood had a front row seat. So that's how I ended up hosting my son's birthday with my husband's secret family as surprise guests. And trust me, the real show was just beginning. If you've ever had an out-of-body experience, you'll know what I mean when I say I watched myself go through the next 30 minutes as if I were floating above my own head. There I was, smiling, offering drinks, introducing Brandon's friends from out of town to my mother-in-law and a gaggle of parents who had no idea they'd just wandered onto the set of a real-life soap opera. Brandon looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. His eyes kept darting to me, pleading, "Claire, can we talk, please?" But I wasn't about to give him the courtesy of privacy. Not after this. I kept my voice steady, even cheerful. "We can talk after the cake, Brandon. For now, why don't you help me pass out party hats?" The look on his face, half rage, half terror, was almost comical if it hadn't been so pathetic. The other woman, Melissa, took a seat in the shade, her kids clinging to her legs. I caught her eye and tried to telegraph what? Sympathy, solidarity, or maybe just "I see you." She gave me a tiny, exhausted nod. People filtered in and out of the yard, blissfully oblivious, snapping photos of their kids with superhero masks or admiring the handmade cupcakes. My own parents cornered Brandon for a round of small talk about the big promotion. I watched him sweat through every lie, marveling at how easily he'd lived a double life. Jake, of course, wanted to know who these new kids were. "Mom, are they cousins?" he asked, licking frosting off his fingers. Before I could answer, Melissa said gently, "We're kind of like cousins, I guess. Maybe more like friends for now." Jake, in his 7-year-old wisdom, nodded. "Cool. Wanna see my new bike?" The kids ran off together, leaving Melissa and me alone for the first time. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I only found out about you a month ago. He told me he was divorced, that he barely saw his son. When I found the party invitation in his car, I had to know." I wanted to scream, I wanted to hug her, I wanted to curl up and die. Instead, I laughed, a short, sharp, almost hysterical sound. "Don't apologize, you did nothing wrong, he's the one who's been playing us both." She bit her lip. "Are you going to kick me out?" I shook my head. "No, but I'm not letting him off easy either." The rest of the party was a surreal blur. I watched Brandon try and fail to keep up the charade, sneaking away to make frantic phone calls, probably to his lawyer or whoever could tell him how to fix this. Melissa and I watched from opposite sides of the patio, neither of us willing to be the one to leave. When it was time for presents, Jake was the happiest kid alive. He tore through gift wrap, squealing over Legos and action figures. When he opened the present from Melissa's kids, a hand-drawn card and a new soccer ball, he beamed. "Thanks, guys," he shouted. "Now we can all play together." The irony almost killed me. Here we were, two families thrown together by one man's lies, and our kids were forming a bond he never intended. Finally, as guests trickled out, Brandon cornered me by the kitchen sink. "Claire, please, let's talk." I turned, folding a dish towel in my hands, and fixed him with a stare that could have frozen lava. "Talk? Sure, let's talk. Why don't you tell me exactly how long you've had a second wife? Or do you prefer mistress? Because, fun fact, the word wife implies exclusivity, and you're fresh out of that." He looked around, desperate for privacy. "Please, not here. Can't we go upstairs?" "No, Brandon," I said, voice cold and steady. "You made this mess in front of our families, our friends, our children. You can answer for it here, in the light of day." He slumped, defeated. "I messed up, I cut him off. "You didn't just mess up, Brandon. You built an entire life out of lies. Did you ever think about what would happen if the truth came out? Did you ever think about Jake, about me, about your other kids?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking years older than he had that morning. I never meant for it to go this far." Melissa stepped into the kitchen then, her face pale. "You told me you were divorced. You said she kept you from seeing your son. You made me feel sorry for you. All those nights you were working late, was it her or me?" His face crumpled. I was trying to do right by everyone, but I screwed it all up. I laughed again, bitter this time. Doing right by everyone, you can barely do right by yourself. Go outside, Brandon. Tell your mother your father are friends. Tell everyone who you really are. He stared at me, realizing he had no more moves left. Then, slowly, he walked out onto the porch. Everyone, he said, his voice trembling, there's something I need to confess. I stood behind him, arms crossed, heart pounding. This was the moment everything changed. For me, for Melissa, for our children. And as I watched the truth finally shatter the image of our perfect life, I knew I'd never be the same. Let me just say, there's a moment, right when a bomb goes off in your life, when everything gets silent, like the world itself is holding its breath. That's how it felt on our back patio, with the party debris everywhere, when Brandon finally opened his mouth to confess. He stammered out half-truths about mistakes, misunderstandings, wanting to do the right thing. He tried to play the tortured soul, the man torn between two lives. My mother-in-law burst into tears. My father's face went stone cold, like all the warmth had drained from him in an instant. The parents who were left tried not to stare, but you could see them leaning in, some with pity, some with horrified curiosity. Melissa stood next to me, arms folded. She didn't say a word, just watched him unravel. The kids, blissfully, were still inside. I was grateful for that small mercy. Brandon tried to control the story, of course. He said he loved us both, that he never meant to hurt anyone, that he'd felt trapped and didn't know how to choose. You'd think the man was talking about picking paint colors, not about double-crossing two entire families. Then my mom, God bless her, stepped forward. Brandon, are you telling me you've been married to both my daughter and this woman? You have children with both. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. It was the first honest thing he'd done all year. I took a breath and realized the entire trajectory of my life was about to split, before and after this moment. I could have screamed, thrown things, demanded answers. But instead, I just asked, so what's your plan, Brandon? How are you going to take care of all these kids now? Are you going to split weekends, or should we all just move in together for your convenience? There was a pause, then a ripple of uncomfortable laughter. Even Melissa managed a small, incredulous smile. Claire, please, don't make a scene, he begged. Let's talk about this in private. I looked him straight in the eye. No more secrets, no more hiding. If you want forgiveness, you can start by being honest in front of everyone you lied to. Melissa finally spoke. Did you ever love either of us, Brandon, or were we just, what, accessories for your image? His answer, just silence, staring at his shoes. Looking back now, I'm not sure what I expected. An apology? An explanation that would somehow make it all hurt less. Instead, I got a broken man, his parents whispering behind their hands, and two women standing in the ruins of what they thought were their lives. We called the kids outside. I knelt in front of Jake, searching for the right words. Sweetie, there's something you need to know. Daddy made a mistake. He was trying to have two families at once, and that's not okay, but you have even more people who love you now. Jake looked at Melissa's kids, then at me. Does that mean we get to have sleepovers all the time? Leave it to a child to find a silver lining in a train wreck. After the crowd had cleared, Melissa and I sat together at the kitchen table, the dishes forgotten. What do we do now? She asked, her voice so small it almost broke me. I have an idea, I said, a wild, fierce determination rising up in me. We're not going to let him control the story. We're going to tell it ourselves. And so, that night, while Brandon packed a bag and left with his tail between his legs, Melissa and I launched the GoFundMe page for the real children of Mr. Family Man. The tagline? Help us build a future for the kids he tried to hide. I thought the hard part was over. I had no idea how much messier and stranger things were about to get. I thought posting that GoFundMe would be a tiny act of rebellion, maybe a way to raise a few dollars to help the kids and reclaim my narrative. What happened next still blows my mind. Within hours, the link had been shared in a local parenting Facebook group. Then some true crime TikTok mom picked up the story, stitching a reaction to my very first public post. Imagine throwing your kid a birthday party and finding out your husband has another family. Girl, that's not a plot twist, that's a miniseries. Her video went viral. Suddenly, my inbox exploded. People messaged from all over the country, some shared similar heartbreaks, some offered legal advice, a few even wanted to hire me for speaking gigs. News outlets reached out. I saw myself trending on Twitter. One journalist called us the real-life Maury show with better lighting. Brandon was, of course, furious. He accused me of humiliating him, ruining his career, weaponizing our children. He tried to get the GoFundMe taken down. He tried calling my parents, then his, begging someone to make me stop. But the truth was out, and for the first time in years, I felt powerful. Melissa moved into our guest room. The kids adapted shockingly well. Turns out, when you're 5, 7, or 9, new siblings are more of a curiosity than a trauma. They played Mario Kart and built elaborate blanket forts. If anyone was lost, it was the adults. But not everyone was supportive. A few people left nasty comments, asking if I drove him to cheat, or why I didn't notice the double life sooner. One anonymous email threatened to expose the real story about me. For every 100 supportive messages, one would sting like salt in an open wound. Melissa and I found comfort in gallows humor. We called ourselves the sister wives who never signed up for polygamy. We took turns responding to the most absurd DMs, making a game out of blocking the trolls. Behind closed doors, though, I was unraveling. There were nights when I barely slept, replaying every argument, every late night, every time Brandon had a work emergency. The shame hit hardest at 3 a.m. when the house was still, and I wondered how I'd let myself believe in him for so long. Melissa was struggling too. One night, over cheap boxed wine, she confessed, "I wanted to hate you, Claire. I thought you were the other woman, the homewrecker. Turns out we were both just collateral damage." I hugged her, and we cried together, not just for ourselves, but for all the women who'd ever been gaslit into thinking love should hurt this much. The legal fallout was a nightmare. Brandon's double marriage was technically bigamy, but prosecutors rarely pursued it unless there was fraud. Good news for him, not so much for us. Instead, the lawyers fought over child support, assets, and who would pay for Jake's birthday party now that it had made national headlines. Brandon tried to cut off funds to punish us. Joke was on him. The GoFundMe hit 5 figures in 3 days. The attention didn't fade, though. People debated our story on podcasts, morning shows, and subreddits. I even got a message from a Hollywood producer asking if we'd option the rights for a docudrama. Melissa laughed. Maybe we can at least get a better vacation out of this than the one Brandon promised us. But even as the world watched, I felt lonelier than ever. The internet moves fast, grief does not. One morning, Jake asked if Daddy was ever coming home. My throat tightened. "Honey, Daddy has to fix a lot of mistakes, but you know who's not going anywhere, me and Melissa, and your new best friends." Looking back, I see how the drama of going viral masked the slow, painful healing underneath. Each day, I woke up wondering what fresh disaster would hit: an interview request, a lawyer's letter, another text from Brandon's mother begging me to forgive her son. But I also started to notice glimmers of hope. The kids giggling, Melissa and I binge-watching trash TV, my own sense of humor resurfacing. I realized that even if the internet forgot about us next week, our lives would never be the same. And for the first time, I was starting to believe that might actually be a good thing. The news cycle eventually moved on, but our lives were still in chaos. With every new day, there was a fresh reminder of what we'd lost and what we'd gained, whether we wanted it or not. The most surreal moment? Our mailbox filled with handwritten letters. Some came from other women who'd been through the same hell. "Thank you for telling the truth. I felt so alone." Others were pure hate, anonymous, bitter, warning me that kids always suffer when women destroy a marriage. I started to understand why people say there's no such thing as closure. There's just the slow work of making peace with the mess. Brandon, true to form, tried every trick in the narcissist's playbook. He showed up on my doorstep, flowers in hand, with that wounded puppy look I once found irresistible. "Claire, can't we just talk?" For the kids, his voice had that pleading edge, but this time I was immune. I let him in, mostly so the neighbors wouldn't call the cops. We sat at our kitchen table, Melissa upstairs with the kids, pretending not to listen. "Do you realize what you've done?" he said, his voice low. "You've made me a joke, Claire, my job, my reputation." I stared at him, remembering the man who used to make me laugh until I cried, the man I thought was my soulmate. "You did that to yourself, Brandon. You could have told the truth. You could have picked one life and lived it." He tried blaming stress, his father's abandonment, the pressure to provide for two families. For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. Melissa came down, arms crossed, jaw clenched. "You owe us more than apologies, Brandon. You owe these kids a father who shows up. You owe her a real explanation." He said nothing. That silence was the last thing he ever gave us. After he left, Melissa and I sat together in the living room. I could see the gears turning in her head, the same thoughts swirling through mine. What now? How do you move forward when everything you thought was solid turned to quicksand? Our answer came that weekend. The GoFundMe campaign took on a life of its own. Parents from all over sent messages, donations, offers for playdates and babysitting. Local businesses sent care packages, even gift cards for groceries and pizza. Someone donated a used minivan for all those new siblings. The love was overwhelming, but it also made me realize just how public my pain had become. That Saturday, Jake had a soccer game. Melissa and I stood on the sidelines, cheering together, blending in like any other suburban moms. For the first time, I didn't feel like a fraud. But the biggest shift happened when I decided to speak at a women's center in our town. They'd seen my story online and asked if I'd share my experience. At first, I hesitated. Who was I to give advice? But something in me knew I needed to reclaim my story, to help someone else survive what I barely had. Standing at the podium, looking out at a room full of women, some nodding, some wiping away tears, I told them the truth. "I don't have all the answers. I don't even know what tomorrow looks like. But I know this: you don't have to carry someone else's secrets. You don't have to accept less than you deserve. And even when the world feels like it's ending, there's still a life waiting on the other side." The applause was thunderous. For the first time in months, I felt free. Not healed, not whole, but free. That night, as Melissa and I cleaned up the kitchen, she turned to me and said, "I never thought I'd be grateful for any of this. But I am. Because now, at least, we know the truth. And the truth sets us free." I smiled, tears in my eyes, and hugged her tight. But just when I thought the worst was behind us, life threw one more curveball our way. And this time, it was something none of us could have predicted. You'd think after everything, life would settle into something resembling normal. You'd think I'd finally get a break, right? But as I quickly learned, the universe isn't in the business of tying up loose ends with pretty bows. The final twist came exactly 2 weeks after my son's birthday party, the day both my world and Melissa's turned upside down. I was sorting through the last of the charity mail. Yes, there was still a mountain of it, when a certified letter from Brandon's lawyer arrived. My hands shook as I opened it, half expecting some kind of desperate plea or a threat. But what I found was even more bizarre. Brandon had filed for custody. Not just partial custody, full custody of both sets of kids, all our kids. The rage that washed over me was cold and surgical. This man, who had lied to us, built 2 lives on deception, now wanted to parade as the devoted father. I called Melissa. She got an identical letter. "He's delusional," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He can't seriously think." But he could, and he did. Brandon's last-ditch attempt at control wasn't about the kids or even about us. It was about his image, his need to be seen as the wronged party, the man fighting for his family. He hired a PR rep. He gave interviews. He tried to spin the narrative into one of tragic misunderstanding. It backfired spectacularly. Our community, our new patchwork family, and the army of online supporters weren't fooled. The judge, unimpressed by Brandon's theatrics, threw out his case. In a hearing that lasted all of 20 minutes, the court made it clear. Brandon could have supervised visits if the kids ever wanted them. That was it. As I walked out of the courthouse with Melissa and our kids, I felt lighter than I had in years. The sun was shining, the air was crisp, and for the first time, I felt safe. The kids ran ahead, chasing each other, laughing so loudly that people turned to smile at us. That night, after tucking Jake and Mia into bed, I sat on the porch with Melissa. We watched the stars come out, a comfortable silence between us. "You ever think about what comes next?" she asked. "All the time," I replied. "But for the first time, I'm not afraid of it. I'm hopeful." We started planning that charity, really planning. Not just a reaction to betrayal, but a way to build something beautiful from the ashes. We called it New Roots, for every child left stranded by a parent's double life. Donations poured in. Other women joined us, some who'd been through similar hell, others who just wanted to help. I never imagined I'd find a friend, a partner, in the woman I once thought was my rival. Melissa and I became each other's support, our kids became siblings, and together we started building a life that was honest, messy, and real. Looking back now, I see all the signs I missed, all the late nights, secret calls, weird work trips. But I also see how much I've grown. I'm not just someone who survived a husband's betrayal. I'm someone who turned the worst day of her life into a new beginning, not just for myself, but for a lot of people who needed hope. Would I ever trust like that again? Maybe not. But I'm done apologizing for loving hard, for wanting a family, for believing in people. If anything, my story proves you can be broken and still find the strength to start over. So if you're watching this, or listening, or reading these words and thinking, "I could never survive something like that," trust me, you can. And you're not alone. Would you have done the same? Or would you have gone nuclear, set fire to everything, left town? I don't know. But I do know this. Sometimes the only way to win is to walk away with your dignity and build something new out of the ruins. Because even after the biggest betrayal, there's still life and love waiting for you on the other side. Subscribe to my Mia's Stories YouTube channel for raw, emotional stories and authentic insights that encourage healing, growth, and understanding. Don't forget to be part of a supportive space where stories inspire and lessons resonate. What do you think about this story? Let us know in the comments. Your opinion truly matters to us, and we're here for you.